The United States is running concentration camps on our southern border.
Say what?
Welcome to Roundtable Decision. I am your host, Wyatt Birkenoff. In today's video, we're going to talk about the National Collegiate Athletic Association, or best known as NCAA. And before we get into the video, I was going to explain how the NCAA was founded and what its role is, so that you will understand the video in case you are not a sports fan, or more importantly, not a college sports fan. So the organization is the United States that administers intercollegiate athletics. It was formed in 1906 as an intercollegiate athletic association to draw up competition and eligibility rules for gridiron football and other intercollegiate sports. The NCAA adopted its current name in 1910. In 1921, it conducted its first national championship event, the National College Track and Field Championship, and it gradually extended its jurisdiction over intercollegiate competition and other sports and their college associations or conferences. The NCAA did not acquire significant powers to endorse its rules until 1942. However, in 1952, it began regulating live televised coverage of college football in order to protect game attendance in the stadiums. So as they said in this paragraph, the NCAA was first made to grant competition and eligibility rules for gridiron football and other intercollegiate sports. The big thing here is eligibility rules. Before the NCAA, there was obviously rules of what the sport was. For football, it would be the basic rules, like there's 4 downs. If you don't get your first down in 3 downs, you either punt it to give it to the other team or you risk it. But if you don't get the first down, then you give the ball to the other team where you first started. And obviously you have these rules. Anybody who's watched football knows about these rules. And the NCAA was granted a full set of rules. And more importantly, they granted a set of rules for like referees to be based on, such as pass interference. Before this, there was the brief understanding of what it was, but the NCAA clearly defined what pass interference was. Despite if you are a college football fan or NFL fan, you still know that there is a lot of controversy around pass interference. But that's a side note. But recently the NCAA has gotten some attention as a new California bill to pay student athletes could lead to the NCAA ban. So essentially, California is wanting to pass a bill where will allow student athletes to get paid money as well as their scholarship, essentially. So they would get paid money on the side, such as if they were to do a signing event, where if they're popular running back or popular wide receiver or for soccer or popular forward or midfielder, they would be able to get signed autographs from their fans and they would get paid to do these signings because professional athletes in the NFL or in football or in soccer for the Americans and even some minor events like rugby here in America, where it's not that popular, but across the board. Anyway, all these major sports events, you get paid, these professional athletes get paid to sign autographs. And for some of them, it's on their contracts where they're required to have a certain amount of fan events, essentially, where they're out with the fans and they're interacting with the fans to get the popularity of that player and the popularity of the team increased. Before I go into the specifics of the bill, I thought I would read this article, what highlighted a timeline of events for the NCAA. So the NCAA is ratcheting up its opposition to a California bill that would allow college athletes in the state to earn compensation for their own image or likeness beginning in 2023. In a letter to the chairs of 2 state assembly committees last week, the NCAA president Mark Ebert implied that the bill becomes law as it is written. California schools could face the prospect of being prohibited from practicing in NCAA competitions. That includes 23 NCAA Division I schools, 4 of which are in the Pac-12 conference. The bill overwhelmingly passed the Senate last month. On Tuesday, it is scheduled to be the subject of a hearing and a vote by the Assembly Arts, Entertainment, Sports, Tourism, and Internet Media Committee. If the bill advances, it would go into the Higher Education Committee, which would have to be approved by July 11th for it to remain alive this year. In his letter, Ebert asked the committees to postpone consideration of the bill while the NCAA reviews its rules for considering athletics' ability to make money for their own names, images, and likeness. On May 14th, about a week before the Senate approves the bill, by a 31-4 vote, the NCAA announced the creation of a working group of schools, presidents, and athletic administrations to examine issues highlighted in recently proposed federal and state legislation related to the student-athlete name, like, and image. And I'm going to skip a few and go to what Ebert said, because this is going to be a point I make for the other direction. And Ebert is the NCAA chairman or NCAA president. As he said, "We recognize all efforts that have been undertaken to develop this bill in the context of complex issues related to the current collegiate model that have been the subject of litigation and much national debate," Ebert wrote to the committee chairs. Nonetheless, when contrasted with the current NCAA rules as drafted, the bill threatens to alter materially the principles of intercollegiate athletes and create local differences that would make it impossible to host fair national championships. So that is a big thing, what he hinted, and I'll read on a couple of other articles, that he's arguing that it will prevent fair championships as it might attract players because they're able to get paid on their image and likeness. So it would destroy the NCAA's reliability if all of a sudden a college or a state was able to pay a player with these signings. Even though it's not the NCAA's money, it is still a marketing strategy what the NCAA feels is unjust. And so I'll go to this article to read a little bit more on it. But before I read the article, there's the case the NCAA has made, which is interesting. The NCAA says that they already have paid their college athletes because they offer them scholarships. And these scholarships allow the athletes, as long as they maintain a proper grade level and keep in their athletic scholarship or keep their athletic abilities, they will be able to get their college paid for through housing, food, and everything else. And I believe even textbooks are in the scholarship as well. So essentially their college is free if they're a high-level NCAA Division I athlete. And NCAA argues that that is efficient enough for what they do. But the players who are in the NCAA Division I and other players have argued that this is unfair because they are the entertainment and these colleges make bokus of money, so much money that it swings the scale in such an opposite direction. And this is a problem because they feel that they aren't getting treated fairly for what they give the colleges through their entertainment factor. So keeping that in mind, that's why this bill has come up. And the state of California is currently considering a bill that is signed into law that would allow NCAA athletes in California to profit off their name, image, and likeness, as we heard in 2023. And Mark Ebert implied a letter to the chairs of 2 assemblies in California that if passed, California schools could face an NCAA championship ban. And then it also tells you that there's 23 Division I schools in California, 4 of which are in the Pac-12 conference, what we saw on the other article. And then I'll also read this as well, as Ebert declared that the proposed legislation would make it impossible to host a fair national championship. Again, a point we heard. So it goes over the bill, and it talks about what Senator Nancy Skinner had to say, as she said, last week, wording was added to the bill that says it is the intent of the legislator to monitor the NCAA working group and revisit the issue to implement significant findings and recommendations to the NCAA working group in furtherance of this statutory changes proposed by the act. But that's not it. North Carolina has also proposed to have a similar bill as well, allowing college athletes to get paid. In North Carolina, Congressman Mark Walker has declared his intentions to introduce the Student Athlete Equality Act, which would allow the NCAA student athletes to profit from the use of name, image, and likeness. If approved, the bill would amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 and change the definition of qualified amateur sports organization in the tax code. The bill does not call on universities to pay student athletes. That was a point I hinted at earlier, as the NCAA already pays their athletes through these scholarships. As hinted here, signing on with the university if you're a student athlete should not be a moderation on your rights as an individual. Excuse me. This is time and a moment to be able to push back and defend your rights of these young adults. Here's the thing. We are not asking the university, we are not asking the NCAA to pay a single dollar into this. You have done your part offering full scholarships. Just don't restrict the rest of it. That's the big thing with the full scholarships. And this is still Walker, the senator, stating this. And there's also an example I thought I would read of two Olympic gold medalists, Katie Ledecky and Simone Manuel, both stepped away from illustrations on the NCAA careers to accept scholarships from a third-party brands. Despite going pro, both have remained with the Stanford swim team and are continuing with their educators. Swimming 2 or 3 years as an NCAA athlete only to turn pro halfway as an Olympic quad is relatively common among top collegiate swimmers, particularly those that already have Olympic experience. World records are both. It is difficult to gauge whether this bill would keep more athletes in the NCAA till their 4 years of eligibility is run out, though swimming and diving are much more different from other sports like football, baseball, basketball, and hockey. And hinting on that point, that is a big point what I've heard on talk radio, as I always listen to this one talk radio station when driving from college, because I like sports, and I've always have liked sports, and I like what these guys have to say. And they were talking about this bill, and that's what got me interested in looking at it and telling you about the bill. But essentially, they were saying that football and basketball are the big major profits of the NCAA. And other sports that are still collegiate and are still in the NCAA, like softball, lacrosse, and other lower level sports, even you could say swimming is a lower level sport as far as how much money it makes, it would become unfair on how much these players would be called. Because you could take a high level swimmer and a popular football player, not even the best football player, but a popular football player, and the chances are that football player in America, and especially in the South where I live, would definitely get much more attention than that popular swimmer or that popular softball player and such. Because I guarantee that most of you watching this video, if not all of you watching this video, don't know a single swimmer besides those names I've listed, or a single lacrosse player, or a single softball player what plays for college sports or college NCAA besides the football, baseball, basketball, and even hockey. As hockey is still a lower level sport, but the chances are you might know somebody from hockey. But then again, the hockey doesn't make near as much money. So you're talking about passing a bill what allows the chances, and obviously the free market will determine how much money a person makes for that chance, because you can't just say that if you have this signing, you're guaranteed to make, let's just say, $100. And the swimmer, who's not as popular, also makes $100. Because that would seem a little unfair to the different players, as one is vastly more popular. But then again, if you don't throw a dollar amount out, then you're going to have an inequality of pay, and that will also become a national issue. Even though I do think that you should let the free market decide how much you're worth. But that's a side note to if the bill gets passed, what might be experienced from these colleges what pass it. So And this was just the same little article. I'm going to post this one in the notes in case you want to read a little more information on it. But it says the same thing as the other articles. I just thought I would include it because it's from ESPN and those are a little more credible than the other source what I found information on because I never heard of them. But it's saying the exact same thing. And you could argue that ESPN isn't even that credible anymore either. But that's a whole different side tangent. So we'll just keep going. And this was basically, so the NCAA ranked in over $1 billion last year in dollars. So this is just how much money the college makes. So this is where the fundamental argument is. And if the college makes this much money, they shouldn't be allowed to not pay the athletes or offer the chance to pay their athletes. Because ultimately the NCAA is not the one responsible for paying these athletes. It would be the fans of the athletes. And it would be based off of their chance to experience the pay fairly. So, if I can get this ad out of the way. Holy crap. Okay, whatever. We're going to move on. So the NCAA makes a ton of money. And obviously this becomes highly important because the amount of money the NCAA makes is so unfair or what the players argue is so unfair to the attention the players give. So if we look at the list of NCAA colleges in California and North Carolina, there is obviously some well-known ones such as Fresno in California. Fresno, California. And then you have the UCLA Trojans. You have the UCL Bruins. You have the San Francisco Doms in some degrees. California Golden Bears. So you have all these names where if you're a fan, you probably know who they are. And then you go into North Carolina, and you have similar type of situations. As you all know who Wake Forest is. You all know University of North Carolina. You all know North Carolina A&T. You all know the Duke Blue Devils. Duke is a big one because the NCAA makes the most amount of money in their basketball program. And if you look at the most highly rated basketball programs, Duke and North Carolina are the top two. And if the NCAA goes along and bans North Carolina from being able to participate in NCAA sports or NCAA competitions, they're banning two of their most profitable accounts of how much money they could take. Because the NCAA makes the most amount of money off of basketball, as I'll say here. I'll look it up live and show you that where the NCAA makes the most amount of money. Where does the NCAA make the most amount of money? Sorry for the bounce. This table is pretty wobbly, so. Okay, here we go. As we have an article here from USA Today, which says that the NCAA reports revenues of more than $1 billion in 2017. The NCAA has close to $1.1 billion in annual revenue during its 2017 fiscal year. It is the first time an association has surpassed $1 billion in annual revenue. A little more than half growth from 2016 came from increase in TV and marketing fees. On an expense sell, the associate returned a normal set of payouts after a year, recording a $200 million one-time distribution to Division I members and a $209 million settlement. God, there are so many ads. It becomes unreadable. Sorry for that. I have ad block on this, but it's obviously not working. So the NCAA makes the most amount of money from college. And if they were to ban their two most profitable colleges, being North Carolina and Duke as far as basketball goes, and the amount of attention both colleges get in their basketball program, especially during March Madness, it would be a massive profit loss. And then you take into account of football, which makes the second most amount of money for NCAA, and you're talking about another huge loss as you have several major programs And you have so many colleges in the Pac-12 conference itself. So you basically will take out half of the Pac-12 conference if you decide to ban the teams from California. And then if you ban North Carolina, you're taking a team out of the SEC. And the SEC is one of the most competitive football colleges. And the SEC conference itself would not agree with having that college being removed from it, as they aren't the best college as far as history goes, but they're in the SEC. And the SEC prides itself as being the best conference. And there's no way that they'll let the NCAA at least easily take over them and remove them just because of a bill that allows their students to be paid. And as I said before, the major issue with it is, will there be a certain price limit on how much they can get paid so all sports are equal? Or is it going to be determined by the free market? Because as I stated earlier, a football or basketball player is going to make much more money per autograph or have much more fans seeing that athlete compared to a swimmer or lacrosse player from the same school. And even if you take the best lacrosse player in college and an okay football player or an okay basketball player, the chances are still very high that that basketball or football player would see more fans than the lacrosse player who's the best at the college sport. So this is where the issue becomes. And obviously the NCAA makes a boatload of money, and so much money that's why it's always a national debate over if the NCAA should pay their college students or pay their college athletes. And obviously you have the people that disagree with it because of the scholarships, where they basically are getting a free college, as the North Carolina senator had to say, or representative from North Carolina had to say. But then again, people still argue that it's unfair. And I don't think either side is necessarily right, but I would say if the bill does get passed, that it should be determined by the free market, because obviously these college students, athletes from popular sports, are going to get more chances to sign autographs than a lacrosse player. Therefore, it should be determined by the free market. But if you set a determined price, it's unfair to those athletes. And although they are getting paid for their image and likeness and everything from that bill, I still think that they're ultimately defeating themselves from what they're trying to fix. So thank you for watching this video. Sorry for the little choppiness of the one article, as the ad did not want to go the way. But I do have ad block. It's whatever. So thank you for watching the video. You can check my information below and follow me on my social media if you'd like. I would encourage you to join my Discord, as we have daily discussions of question of the day or any other news that comes up. And any voice makes it much better. So thank you for watching the video.